Welcome back to Shocking Stories, where we peel back the curtain on America's most chilling true crime cases. Tonight, we take you to Sarasota, Florida, where the Magnolia Gardens retirement community promised golden years of comfort and care, but instead became the stage for a string of mysterious deaths, a baffled police force, and a killer no one could have imagined. If you're new, hit subscribe and ring the bell, because you won't want to miss a moment of this twisted tale. It started quietly, as these things often do. Magnolia Gardens was the kind of place you'd want for your parents or grandparents. Manicured lawns, a koi pond, bingo nights, and a staff who knew every resident by name. The residents themselves were a tapestry of American life. Retired teachers, war veterans, homemakers, and business owners, each with stories to tell and years to reflect on. But in the spring of 2024, a shadow crept in. It began with the death of Harold Benson, 84, a retired Navy officer known for his morning walks and his habit of telling the same war stories to anyone who'd listen. On April 3rd, Harold was found in his bed, eyes open, a faint trace of foam at his lips. The night nurse, Carla Ruiz, called it in as a code blue, but by the time paramedics arrived, Harold was gone. The attending physician, Dr. Patel, signed the death certificate. Cardiac arrest, natural causes. After all, Harold had high blood pressure and a history of heart disease. No one questioned it. But then, just 2 weeks later, Loretta Kim, 79, died in her sleep. Loretta had been the life of the monthly bridge club, sharp as a tack, and had just hosted a birthday party for her great-granddaughter. Her family was shocked. "She was healthy, happy, planning a trip to Disney with us," her daughter sobbed. But again, the official cause was natural causes. The staff murmured about the stress of old age, the unpredictability of the body. By the end of June, 4 more residents had died, each under eerily similar circumstances. All were found in bed, often with a peaceful expression, but with subtle signs that nagged at the more observant staff. Pale lips, a faint chemical odor, and in 2 cases, small bruises on the neck. Carla Ruiz, the night nurse, began to worry. She confided in her supervisor, Linda Foster, "It's like someone's picking us off, one by one." Linda, a no-nonsense administrator with a background in geriatric care, brushed her off. "Carla, you're letting your imagination run wild. These are old people. Sometimes it's just their time." But Carla couldn't shake the feeling. She started keeping a notebook, jotting down the times of death, the names, the rooms, even the weather. She noticed something else. Every night before a death, she would see Mrs. Agnes Harper wheeling herself down the hall, humming that old hymn, "I'll Fly Away." Agnes, 80, was a fixture at Magnolia Gardens. Paralyzed from the waist down by a stroke a decade earlier, she was sharp as a tack, with a dry wit and a reputation for kindness. She spent her days reading, knitting, and chatting with neighbors. She's like everyone's grandma, Carla thought. But why is she always there? The 7th death finally brought the police. Edna Collins, 76, had been the youngest resident to die. Just days before, she had danced at the spring social, laughing and spinning her walker like a prop. Her family was furious. "She was in better shape than I am," her son told reporters. "We want answers." Detective Marcus Hall was assigned to the case. Hall was a seasoned investigator, tall and broad-shouldered, with a reputation for dogged persistence. He'd seen his share of tragedy, drug overdoses, domestic violence, even a few murders. But this was different. "When I walked into Magnolia Gardens, it felt like stepping into a different world," he later recalled. "Everyone was polite, everything was clean, but there was this tension, like people were waiting for the next shoe to drop." Hall started with the basics. He reviewed medical records, interviewed staff, and walked the halls late at night, listening to the creaks and whispers of the old building. He noticed the pattern. All victims were relatively healthy, died at night, and showed subtle signs of asphyxiation, pale lips, slight bruising, sometimes a faint chemical odor. He ordered toxicology screens on Edna Collins and the results were shocking. Traces of succinylcholine, a fast-acting paralytic used in surgeries, were found in Etna's system. The drug is nearly undetectable after a few hours, but Hall's quick action caught it in time. Now, this was a homicide investigation. Hall called a meeting with Linda Foster and the medical staff. "Someone in this building is killing your residents," he said, his voice low and steady. "I need full access, security footage, staff records, everything." Linda bristled. "Detective, our staff are like family. I can't believe anyone here would do such a thing." Hall fixed her with a stare. "That's what every administrator says, until it happens." Security footage was combed for clues. Staff were interviewed, backgrounds checked. No one fit the profile of a serial killer. The night nurses were all women in their 40s and 50s with spotless records. The aides were mostly young, underpaid, and overworked, but none had access to the drugs in question. The only person who appeared in the halls before each death was Agnes Harper. Hall decided to pay Agnes a visit. Her room was a time capsule: faded family photos, stacks of library books, a knitting basket, and a nightstand covered in pill bottles. Agnes greeted him with a wry smile. "Detective, I suppose you're here about all the excitement?" Her hands, though frail, were steady as she poured tea. "I know what people are saying, but I haven't left this chair in a decade." Hall noticed her room was filled with books on chemistry and botany. On her nightstand sat a pill organizer, but inside were not just her prescriptions. There were empty capsules, a small vial with a faint chemical smell, and a meticulously kept journal. "I like to keep track of things," Agnes said, her eyes twinkling. Before Hall could press further, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Another resident, Mr. Donnelly, was found unresponsive. Hall rushed out, but Agnes just smiled, humming softly, "I'll fly away, oh glory." The next morning, Hall returned with a warrant. Agnes's room was searched from top to bottom. Hidden inside a hollowed-out book was a stash of chemicals: succinylcholine, digitalis, and a rare plant extract called belladonna. But the most damning evidence was a set of handwritten letters addressed to the families of the deceased. Each letter apologized for ending unnecessary suffering and was signed simply, "A friend." Hall confronted Agnes with the evidence. She didn't flinch. "You think I'm a monster, detective? I'm an angel of mercy. They were in pain, forgotten by their families, waiting to die. I just helped them along." Hall pressed her. "But some weren't terminal, Agnes. They were healthy. Why them?" Agnes's face hardened. "You don't know what it's like to watch people rot from the inside. This place is a prison. I gave them freedom." Surveillance footage, re-examined, showed Agnes wheeling herself into the victims' rooms late at night. But she never touched them. Instead, she left small gifts: flowers, a cup of tea, sometimes a piece of candy. Hall realized the method. Agnes had been using her knowledge of chemistry to lace these items with minute doses of poison, delivered by staff who thought they were harmless treats from a kindly old lady. But she hadn't acted alone. The investigation revealed her accomplice, a young nurse, Emily Tran, who had grown close to Agnes over late-night chats. Emily's own grandmother had died at Magnolia Gardens, and she'd confided her guilt to Agnes, who twisted that pain into complicity. Together, they had orchestrated the deaths, Agnes as the mastermind, Emily as the hands. Emily broke down in interrogation. She said it was mercy. She said they wanted to go. I just wanted to help." Agnes, for her part, remained eerily calm. "I never forced anyone. I just gave them a choice." As the case unfolded, Hall dug deeper into Agnes's past. He found a trail of tragedy: a husband who died young, a son lost to addiction, a life marked by loss and disappointment. Agnes had been a chemistry teacher before her stroke, known for her brilliance and her strictness. Former students described her as intimidating but fair. But after her stroke, something changed. She became withdrawn, bitter, obsessed with the idea of mercy. Hall interviewed other residents. Some described Agnes as a confidant, someone who listened to their fears and promised them peace. Others recalled her as manipulative, always asking probing questions about their pain, their regrets, their wishes for the end. She knew how to get inside your head, one resident said. She made you think she was your friend, but she was always watching, always judging. The trial of Agnes Harper became a media sensation. The Angel of Death case forced the nation to confront uncomfortable questions about eldercare, euthanasia, and the hidden suffering in retirement homes. Agnes never denied her role. "I did what I thought was right," she told the court. "If that makes me a killer, so be it." Emily Tran, racked with guilt, testified against Agnes in exchange for a lighter sentence. She described how Agnes had manipulated her, playing on her grief and sense of duty. "She made me believe I was doing God's work," Emily sobbed. "But now I see I was just a pawn." Prosecutor Janet Rodriguez, a veteran of high-profile murder cases, faced a unique challenge. How do you convince a jury that a grandmother figure could be a cold-blooded killer? "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Rodriguez began in her opening statement, "the defense will try to convince you that Agnes Harper is a harmless old woman who was simply trying to help people in pain. But the evidence will show you that she is actually one of the most calculating and manipulative killers this state has ever seen." The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. Rodriguez presented the jury with Agnes's detailed notebooks, the audio recordings of her consent sessions with victims, and the chemical evidence found in her room. She called witness after witness, family members of the victims, staff members who had been manipulated into assisting Agnes, and forensic experts who explained how the murders had been carried out. One of the most powerful moments came when Jennifer Kim, Loretta's daughter, took the stand. Through tears, she described her mother's final weeks at Magnolia Gardens. "Mom was excited about our planned trip to Disney World," Jennifer testified. "She had been talking about it for months, making lists of things she wanted to do with her great-granddaughter. She wasn't ready to die. She had so much to live for." Jennifer then played a voicemail her mother had left just days before her death. "Jenny, that sweet Agnes lady brought me some special tea tonight. She's so thoughtful. She says it will help me sleep better. I'm so lucky to have such caring people here." The prosecution also called Dr. Michael Harrison, a toxicology expert who explained how Agnes had used her knowledge of chemistry to commit the perfect murders. "Succinylcholine is particularly insidious," Dr. Harrison testified. "It causes complete paralysis within minutes, but the victim remains conscious and aware. They literally cannot move or cry out for help. It's a terrifying way to die, and it leaves very little trace evidence if you don't know to look for it immediately." Detective Marcus Hall's testimony provided crucial insight into Agnes's methods and motivations. He walked the jury through the investigation, explaining how Agnes had used her wheelchair and her reputation as a harmless grandmother to avoid suspicion. Agnes Harper weaponized people's assumptions about elderly, disabled women, Hall testified. She knew that no one would suspect a woman in a wheelchair of being capable of murder. She used that prejudice as camouflage while she killed at least 7 people, and possibly many more. The defense, led by attorney Michael Stevens, attempted to portray Agnes as a mentally ill woman whose judgment had been impaired by depression, isolation, and the trauma of her stroke. Stevens argued that Agnes genuinely believed she was performing acts of mercy, not murder. "My client is not a monster," Stevens told the jury. "She is a sick, confused woman who lost her way after suffering a devastating stroke that robbed her of her independence and her sense of purpose." Stevens called several mental health experts who testified about the psychological impact of sudden disability and the depression that often follows strokes. Dr. Elizabeth Warner, a geriatric psychiatrist, explained that Agnes's behavior could be understood as a misguided attempt to regain control and purpose in her life. when someone loses their physical abilities and their professional identity, as Agnes did, they may seek other ways to feel powerful and useful, Dr. Warner testified. Unfortunately, Agnes's background in chemistry and her access to vulnerable people created a perfect storm for tragedy. But the prosecution's rebuttal was devastating. Rodriguez called Dr. Sarah Chen, the forensic psychologist who had evaluated Agnes, to explain why the defendant's actions were those of a calculating killer, not a mentally ill woman acting out of confusion. Agnes Harper's crimes show clear premeditation, planning, and awareness of right and wrong, Dr. Chen testified. She knew what she was doing was illegal. That's why she was so careful to avoid detection. She knew it was wrong. That's why she manipulated others into helping her. This is not the behavior of someone who is mentally incompetent. This is the behavior of a serial killer. Perhaps the most dramatic moment of the trial came when Agnes herself took the stand. Against her attorney's advice, she insisted on testifying in her own defense. What followed was a chilling display of narcissism and lack of remorse that sealed her fate with the jury. "I want everyone to understand that I never acted out of malice," Agnes said, her voice steady and clear. "Everything I did was motivated by compassion. I saw people suffering, people who had lost their dignity and their hope, and I offered them a way out. I gave them peace." When Prosecutor Rodriguez cross-examined her, Agnes showed no emotion as she described her victim's final moments. "Mrs. Harper," Rodriguez asked, "Harold Benson told you he sometimes felt guilty about the war, but he never explicitly asked you to kill him, did he?" "He didn't need to ask explicitly," Agnes replied calmly. "I could see the pain in his eyes. I understood what he needed." "So you decided, on your own, that he would be better off dead?" "I decided to offer him relief from his suffering. The choice was ultimately his." "But he couldn't make a choice if you drugged his tea first, could he?" Agnes paused for a moment, then smiled slightly. "Sometimes people need help making difficult decisions." The courtroom was silent as the implications of Agnes's words sank in. Here was a woman who had appointed herself judge, jury, and executioner for people whose only crime was growing old and experiencing the normal challenges of aging. The prosecution also revealed additional evidence that had been discovered during the investigation. Agnes's computer contained research on other retirement homes, detailed studies of various poisons and their effects, and even correspondence with online forums dedicated to mercy killing and euthanasia. She had been planning to write a book about her experiences, tentatively titled The Compassionate Choice, A Guide to Ending Unnecessary Suffering. Agnes Harper saw herself as a pioneer, Rodriguez told the jury in her closing argument. She believed she was developing a new model for elder care, one where she would decide who lived and who died based on her own twisted criteria. She wasn't providing mercy. She was playing God with other people's lives. The jury deliberated for just over 6 hours before returning with their verdict. Guilty on all counts of first-degree murder. As the verdict was read, Agnes showed no emotion, sitting quietly in her wheelchair with the same serene expression she had worn throughout the trial. When Judge Patricia Morrison asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Agnes simply replied, "I regret nothing. I did what needed to be done." Judge Morrison sentenced Agnes Harper to life in prison without the possibility of parole, calling her crimes a betrayal of the most fundamental trust between caregiver and patient. The judge also ordered that Agnes undergo psychological evaluation and treatment, though she noted that the defendant had shown no indication of wanting to change or feeling remorse for her actions. The impact of Agnes's crimes extended far beyond the courtroom. Magnolia Gardens underwent a complete overhaul of its policies and procedures. The facility installed additional security cameras, implemented new protocols for medication handling, and required all staff to undergo extensive training on recognizing signs of elder abuse. Linda Foster, the facility director, resigned in shame, saying she could never forgive herself for failing to protect the residents under her care. The case also sparked a nationwide conversation about elder care and the vulnerability of nursing home residents. Advocacy groups called for stricter oversight of retirement facilities, better training for staff, and more involvement from family members in their loved ones' care. The Agnes Harper case is a wake-up call for all of us, said Dr. Patricia Moore, Director of the National Elder Care Safety Institute. We need to do better at protecting our most vulnerable citizens from predators who would exploit their trust and their dependence. Emily Tran, the nurse who had been manipulated into helping Agnes, received a suspended sentence in exchange for her cooperation with the investigation. She left the nursing profession and now works as an advocate for elder abuse prevention. I want to make sure that what happened at Magnolia Gardens never happens again, she said. I want to help other healthcare workers recognize the signs of manipulation and abuse so they don't become unwitting accomplices to killers like Agnes Harper. The families of Agnes's victims struggled to find closure. Many filed civil lawsuits against Magnolia Gardens, arguing that the facility had failed in its duty to protect their loved ones. No amount of money can bring my mother back, said Jennifer Kim. But maybe these lawsuits will force other facilities to take security and oversight more seriously. 6 months after her conviction, Agnes Harper died in her prison cell of what was ruled natural causes, a heart attack brought on by her advanced age and poor health. Some saw irony in the fact that she died naturally after denying that same peaceful end to so many others. Her death sparked debate about whether justice had truly been served, given that she had avoided spending years in prison for her crimes. Agnes's final journal entry, found in her cell after her death, provided a chilling glimpse into her unrepentant mindset. They call me a killer, but I was a liberator. I freed those people from lives that had become burdens, both to themselves and to their families. History will vindicate me. Someday, society will understand that what I did was necessary and compassionate. I only regret that I didn't have more time to help more people find peace. The Magnolia Gardens case led to significant changes in how elder care facilities operate across Florida and beyond. New laws were passed requiring more stringent background checks for employees, mandatory reporting of suspicious deaths, and regular inspections by state health departments. The Agnes Harper Act, as it became known, also established new protocols for investigating deaths in nursing homes and required facilities to maintain detailed records of all medications and their handling. Detective Marcus Hall, who had led the investigation, reflected on the case's broader implications. Agnes Harper showed us that evil can hide behind the most innocent facades, he said. She looked like everyone's grandmother, but she was actually a predator who used people's assumptions about elderly, disabled women to commit horrific crimes. This case taught me that we can never let our guard down, no matter how harmless someone appears to be. The case also highlighted the importance of listening to staff members who raise concerns about unusual patterns or suspicious activities. Carla Ruiz, the night nurse who had first noticed the pattern of deaths, became an advocate for empowering healthcare workers to speak up when something doesn't seem right. If we had taken my concerns more seriously from the beginning, some of those people might still be alive, she said. We need to create environments where staff feel safe reporting their suspicions, even when they seem far-fetched. Dr. Sarah Chen, the forensic psychologist who had evaluated Agnes, used the case to educate other mental health professionals about the psychology of healthcare serial killers. Agnes Harper represents a particularly dangerous type of killer, Dr. Chen explained. She was highly intelligent, manipulative, and able to rationalize her crimes as acts of mercy. These individuals are often the most difficult to detect because they genuinely believe they are helping their victims. The Magnolia Gardens case also sparked research into the phenomenon of angels of death in healthcare settings. Studies revealed that such killers are more common than previously thought, with estimates suggesting that dozens of healthcare workers across the country may be systematically killing patients under the guise of providing mercy or relief from suffering. As our investigation into the Agnes Harper case concludes, we're left with sobering questions about trust, vulnerability, and the responsibility we all share in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Agnes Harper may be gone, but her crimes serve as a permanent reminder that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places, wearing the most innocent faces. The residents of Magnolia Gardens who survived Agnes's reign of terror continue to struggle with the trauma of learning that someone they trusted was actually planning their deaths. Support groups have been established to help them process their experiences and rebuild their sense of security. "We thought we were safe," said Margaret Thornton, who had considered Agnes a close friend. "Now we know that safety is something we can never take for granted." The legacy of the Magnolia Gardens murders extends beyond the immediate victims and their families. The case has become a cautionary tale taught in nursing schools, medical schools, and criminal justice programs across the country. It serves as a reminder that the most vulnerable members of our society deserve our protection, our vigilance, and our unwavering commitment to their safety and dignity. As we close this chapter of shocking stories, we remember Harold Benson, Loretta Kim, Edna Collins, and all the other victims of Agnes Harper's twisted version of mercy. Their deaths were not peaceful or natural. They were murders committed by someone who betrayed the most fundamental trust between caregiver and patient. But their stories have not been forgotten, and their legacy lives on in the reforms and protections that have been put in place to prevent similar tragedies. If this case has moved you as much as it has moved us, please like this video and share it to help raise awareness about elder abuse and the importance of protecting our most vulnerable citizens. Subscribe to Shocking Stories for more investigations that matter. And remember, sometimes the greatest danger comes from those we trust the most. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and never hesitate to speak up when something doesn't seem right. The life you save might be that of someone you love. Thank you for joining us for this difficult but important investigation. The story of Agnes Harper and the Magnolia Gardens murders reminds us that evil can hide behind any face and that our responsibility to protect the vulnerable never ends. Until next time, this has been Shocking Stories, where the truth is always more shocking than fiction.